Hi everyone, I'm Maya from One Pal. We are an organization working on ending the stigma around mental health for South Asians in America. Today we have Michelle, a marriage and family therapist based in South Carolina. Hi Michelle, thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Maya. I'm glad to be here.
Yay! Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. Um, I am currently a marriage and family therapy graduate student. I'm about to do my associate's licensure, which is our equivalent of doing kind of a residency after med school. And then I will be fully licensed. I am hoping to work with adults and couples, specifically people of South Asian heritage and other immigrant and diasporic identities, as well as LGBTQ folks and people from other marginalized backgrounds.
Thank you, Michelle, for that.
Sure thing.
So, so the first question I had is, why do South Asian families have trouble seeking help for mental health?
I think that's a great question, and there are a variety of reasons. I think a few of them are that um, South Asian families don't usually recognize mental health with the same urgency that they might recognize physical health. And that's very common in many cultures. And it's been pretty common all over the world up until the last century, because most of the time symptoms of a physical illness are really physically apparent, and mental illness symptoms are not so apparent. So, I think sometimes there's just like a lack of awareness or full understanding in the first place that some of the behaviors that they might be seeing in someone or even in themselves are signs of a mental illness. Another thing is, I think there are still many South Asians who have a stigmatized view of mental illness and conflate mentally ill with words like mad or crazy, which are words that essentially brand someone as defective and not worthy of love and respect. And that's not true at all. There are many people out there with mental illnesses, living functional lives. And often at first glance, you wouldn't even recognize that they're living with a mental illness.
Thank you, Michelle. What advice would you then give parents in helping their children around mental health?
So I think one of the first things I would tell them is to, really pay attention when they start seeing behaviors in their child like, you know, excessive worry or crying or an intense unwillingness to do something or go somewhere, like say, go to school. These behaviors shouldn't just be brushed off as a child being disrespectful or difficult to deal with. I think, maybe a good start would be for parents just to give their kids a space to talk, to say, like, hey, like, what are you feeling? What's going on? Like, it's okay to be feeling however you're feeling about something. Let's just talk about it. So, creating a non judgmental space to allow your child to talk is an important first step. Um, and if you're noticing something worrisome in your child, I would highly recommend taking them to a mental health specialist to at least get an evaluation.
For a child dealing with mental health issues, how would you advise that they speak to their parents?
So I think because of the power dynamic in most families being the way it is, that can be a little tricky for children at first. Um, I think part of that would depend on how much the child's able to articulate what they're feeling. So generally, younger children might have a harder time recognizing mental illness symptoms, and very often in children, mental illness symptoms will manifest as excessive crying or fear or what are some other ones? Um, General like inability to get along with other children. Teenagers might have an easier time articulating what they're feeling, and because many of them are on the internet now, they might even recognize some symptoms that they're feeling. Like I've had many teenage clients come to me and tell me what they think their diagnosis might be because they were able to do a lot of research. So either way, I think picking a good time to sit down and talk with your family is the first step, and telling them exactly what you're feeling and why it's getting you down, like how you notice it's affecting you. Are you having trouble focusing in school? Are you feeling uneasy around other people at school? Like, are you feeling hopeless about the future? Those are very important things to bring up. And then, reassure your parents that there is something that can be done, and work together to find a mental health specialist, or even seeing your general practitioner could be a good start.
Thank you, Michelle. As community members, what can we do to end the stigma around mental health, especially in South Asian communities?
I'm glad you're asking that. um, I'd say one very important first step is to recognize that nobody with a mental illness is crazy. They're all people who deserve love and respect, and they might be just struggling in different ways. So creating an environment where your friends and peers feel comfortable coming to you and just disclosing that they have a mental illness, or even just talking about some negative feelings they've been experiencing, is important. I think generally creating an environment where people can talk about any feelings they might be experiencing and don't feel pressure to put on a happy face and act like everything's going great is really important. Honestly, sometimes just giving people space to let their feelings out does a lot. I also want to add that, in an environment like this, someone might end up disclosing something other people find really alarming, like maybe they've been having thoughts of suicide or self-harm. And I want to, you know, let you know that it's, it's totally valid that you might be worried or upset hearing that. But also at the same time, it's important to remain calm. Let the person know that you're there for them. Um, Let them know that you really want to help them. And if you're able to, like find a way to set up an appointment with a mental health specialist. Um, sure. I was just trying to think if there was anything specific to South Asian communities. I think another thing is, like being careful about how you talk about people who have mental illnesses. Like, I know that sometimes it's fun to talk about what's going on in other people's lives, and it can be really exciting when something big is going on in someone's life. But, it's really important that you respect the privacy and the feelings of someone who's disclosed their mental illness to you. So basically, long story short, don't gossip. Um, that's a very important time to create that environment where people feel comfortable being open with their feelings, and empathy is huge. So if someone tells you about depression symptoms they've been experiencing, like letting them know that, while maybe you yourself might have depression, you understand what it's like to struggle, or that you really want to be there for them, is really helpful.
What do you think contributes to the stigma in mental health in the South Asian community, and why is this discussion about mental health so difficult?
Um, So something that I've noticed about a lot of South Asian families and different communities, both from my own experience and from what I've heard from other people, is that reputation is very important. Um, Generally, a lot of South Asian families maintain their connections and consider future spouses for their children based on how they're keeping up their reputation. And so when issues come up, like someone having a mental illness, I think it's very common for South Asian families to worry about how the community is going to look at their family. So I think one very important step there is knowing that you don't have to disclose everything to everyone outside of your family. I mean, being honest, I'm sure that we don't tell our neighbors and extended family everything that's going on in our lives, and mental health is no different. Um, in the meantime, also just, breaking the silence on that. If someone at a gathering makes a joke about crazy people or dismisses someone who's having mental illness symptoms as lazy or low functioning, stand up and say, hey, like, that's not okay. We shouldn't be saying that. And explain to them that, you understand that they didn't mean harm, but words have an impact. And instead of having conversations where we talk down about people with mental illnesses, let's have conversations where we educate ourselves and find ways we can uplift those people.
Thank you, Michelle.
Sure.
What do we as a South Asian community in America do well regarding mental health?
I think that's a great question too. um, while there is a lot of talk about the issues and the stigma we're currently having, I think it's also important to highlight that we do have a lot of strengths as a community. I think the close-knit nature of many of our families and, communities in our religious places and neighborhoods, you know, it creates an environment where we have people to talk to if we need to go to people. If we are struggling, I think there's an opportunity to reach out to other people in the community and ask for help. Even having someone drop off a meal for you when you're having a difficult day could mean a lot. um, I think religion can also be an important factor. And for South Asians who are religious, prayer and rituals can help calm the mind and give one a sense of meaning and a drive to keep going forward, even when things are difficult.
Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Was there anything that we didn't touch upon that you wanted to talk about?
I actually did remember something. When thinking about barriers that South Asians might have to discussing and accessing mental health, um, I think it is important to address that therapy can be expensive. And I understand that there, like a lot of fully licensed private practice therapists may not be accessible to everyone. So I don't want to dismiss that. I would like to add that there are still low cost, affordable therapy options available. And that's also something that I want to talk a little bit more about in a future article I write for OnePel, to list some options for South Asian families and individuals who might be struggling to find affordable therapy. Um, I think another important thing to touch on is, we are people of color, we are an ethnic minority, but I think sometimes we're in a bit of a confusing place because many of us are considered to be part of a model minority. And it's very common for people within and outside a model minority group to overlook problems that people might be having in academics or in work or elsewhere, because they're seeing, like the high performance that these people are putting out and not paying attention to the struggle they might be going through at home. So I just want to validate that to any South Asian person out there who is struggling with mental illness symptoms, like your symptoms are completely valid. No matter how well it looks like you're doing in life, it is totally okay that you struggle on days. And, I think it's just as important that we get help for our mental health as it is for any other group.
Thank you, Michelle, for your insights.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming.
Of course. I've been happy to be on here. I'm really glad that you're starting this.
Thank you. I'm excited to continue this conversation around mental health.
Absolutely.